Today we're sitting down with Robert August, founder and president of North Star Synergies out of Denver, Colorado, a firm known for helping leaders in real estate and home building drive stronger sales, marketing, and management outcomes. We'll unpack Robert's journey, the lessons learned from decades in the industry, and what's changing right now, and how buyers decide, how teams follow up, and how businesses can monetize their growth engine. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you, Ed. It's a pleasure to be here.
You've built a career around business development strategy. What were your key chapters that led you to launch North Star Synergies in 2011?
We started the business in 1983.
Oh, okay.
And in fact, we began our businesses both a consulting practice separately and a real estate brokerage, and then eventually became builders and developers along the way after having worked with builders and developers since 1972.
Oh, amazing. And what led you to get into property management and building?
Yeah, our background is really not property management. Our background is the sale of new structures, residential, commercial, retail,
Excellent.
light industrial, recreational, resort, institutional, and governmental.
I think you're leaving a couple out. You do a lot. What was the moment in your career that fundamentally changed how you think about sales and marketing in real estate?
I was 4 years old and left on the corner of our neighborhood where we resided, and my brother left me alone while we were selling lemonade, comic books, and toys. And I just started selling, and I've never stopped since. So in essence, regardless of the product or service, I've always learned to master the art of sales. I spent 4 years in one major, destined to take over the family business. Our company was being unionized for the first time in, it's about 75 years. And my father thought it would be good practice and good education to academically get a degree in labor management relations. And I learned more about negotiating, collective bargaining, and management, and stayed in one major for exactly 4 years. And I think I'm the only one in my generation who's actually gone to college and stayed in one major for 4 consecutive years, in one major only, through my entire scholastic career.
Well, that is an accomplishment. So you work across sales, marketing, management, and you're doing some training now too, right?
Yes, we've been training since the evolution of time. I've managed our own sales teams, our own specific company sales teams, as I shared, since 1983, as well as consulting locally in Metro Denver, nationally from coast to coast and border to border, and we have a very strong international presence.
Oh, wow. Can you explain your core method in plain English of how you're doing this?
Of how I'm consulting or training?
Yeah, consulting, and you're broadening your vision is across the country and now internationally.
Yeah, from day one, I grew up in a corporation family business that was international in scope. I realized early on that the only difference really was a language barrier that I could overcome, as well as understanding culture in various markets. Speaking of which, in the United States, for example, there are 300 major markets. And what goes on, for example, in Torrington, Connecticut, is not the same that goes on in Denver, Colorado. So for each market that you work in, you really have to understand the demographic, psychographic, and geographic cultural aspects of a local market in order to bring products to an availability for consumers to purchase, or businesses to purchase as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. What's your take on the human touch now versus automation, where it's going, the good and the bad?
Yeah, it's really interesting. To really be frank with you, I'd like to tell you that I'm so brilliant that I figured out AI, all by myself. I have 2 brilliant sons, each of which takes after their mother, and they both have their national and international companies. They have taught me more about AI than you can imagine. So much to the point, 2 major courses for the National Association of Home Builders, the largest trade association in the United States, with over 140,000 member companies and over 10 million related employees for those companies. In the process of learning how to use chat GPT, it really made an impact on me when I was writing these various courses. And although AI or ChatGPT is not perfect, it grounded me in understanding the outlines and syllabus that I put together and then came back and revised and edited. And since that time, I've been counseling other corporations in how to use AI on a macro basis and working with their internal technology gurus as well as consultants to their companies. But the fascinating point is that there is so much that we can learn from past buyers, past tenants, to current prospects who become buyers. And following, again, the critical behavioral patterns of these individuals, we're able to understand business to business and business to consumer much more quickly in order to deliver better products and services to the universe.
So all in all, it's been a real benefit, you feel, bringing in AI to your business?
Absolutely. And we began using this technology over 3 years ago. My sons right now have been using the technologies 4+ years. So in essence, it's like not only do we learn from our predecessors, we learn from, our children and our children's children. And one of the things that we've learned, you're never ever established until you've marketed, managed, or sold your last product or service. So you have to stay ahead of the market with trends that are going to not only benefit you, but your customer base. And they want to know that you're ahead of the curve in order to use your services. And it's boded well for us across the board in the real estate profession.
Can you give me a couple examples of how you're doing that?
Of how we're using the technology?
Yes.
That's great. Well, one of the foremost areas is in understanding the consumers who are coming out to look at the products, the real estate for sale or for rent, across the board in any of those sectors that I had shared earlier. And in essence, we do a really good job internally and externally pitching customer relations management programs. And we look for patterns. One of the biggest things that I learned, and you might call it a blink or a tipping point, is through Malcolm Gladwell's outstanding works. The real key is the fact that if you're trying to work on a community of 223 apartment homes or a residential environment, a master plan community with all segments of real estate, you have to pay attention to your prospects and you have to pay attention to your buyers. And you have to understand when you're not making a sale, where they are buying their homes, where they're renting their office space, etc. And so we continue to look for patterns of information whereby we're looking for more results-oriented opportunities. Where did they go to buy? Where did they go to rent? And then we want to break down the reasons as to why they purchased. And we've developed a process internally, having mimicked other consulting practices, but we look at the 5 Ps. And what are the 5 Ps? In no specific order, Ed. It's the product, the place, the price, the promotion, and the people. Usually you'll hear about the first 4. The 5th one, the people, we really believe that if you've got an outstanding staff that records information on a regular basis about who, what, where, why, when, and how about the consumer acquisition or the business-to-business acquisition, you're going to get more definitive information that you can work with AI to enhance your ability to go after or seek the best buyers, the best qualified buyers or tenants within the universe. So that's one degree. Another degree is follow-up. What we have found over and over and over is that 95% of everyone that looks at a potential piece of real estate is never followed up.
Really? It's that high?
It's, believe me, since I have gotten into the industry, as well as studying in college many, many years ago, these statistics were just out there. And year in and year out, we find over and over that only 5% of the people are followed up after the first visit. Because most salespeople, and please take this in the right direction, most salespeople are order takers, not order getters. And as a result, in life, we know through sociology and in psychology that there's only 3% of us that are really sales oriented. The other 97% of people, they're not really cognizant of sales, leasing, etc. And as a result, many sales are lost because most salespeople do not know how to read a potential buyer or tenant. And what they may think is a good buyer may not be a good buyer. What they think is a bad buyer is not. And I mean, growing up in retail, we had one retail store where we beta tested all of our products before they were sent out nationally and internationally. And my grandmother worked retail from 1910 to 1985 when she passed, and in our family business. And we played a game, Ed, called It's a Live One. And I was a little kid, 7 years old, just loved going to work with my dad and shadowing my dad. And he would he would drop me off at the retail store and go over to the plant and take care of running the plant. And my grandmother, at the age of my being at the age of 7, played a game called It's a Live One. And so when somebody would come through the door, I wasn't allowed initially to introduce myself or to engage. I could help my grandmother. We were in the wine and spirits industry, and I would help her with the bottles that they want to purchase or the cases. We had other people that were helping out for the bigger items, but I would always guess wrong. A gentleman would walk in a 3-piece suit, would have a monocle, and I thought this guy was going to, buy 10 cases of champagne or something. And it turned out he bought a 5th of maybe brandy or wine. And then, I'd see some people who would come in, ragtag looking, et cetera, and say to my grandmother before they walked in the door, "Oh, we'll be lucky if he buys a pint." And he'd come in and buy 14 cases. So I started learning, you can't judge a book by its cover. And
Yes.
And in essence, anybody that does walk through the door is a buyer, and they may have a specific need. And the other thing I learned early on, you don't sell needs and wants, Ed. You only sell needs first. And the reason is you stay focused and give the buyer what the buyer wants. And as a result of doing that, once you've gotten the confidence and you've made the sale for the need, then you can sell the wants. But get that first sale.
Okay. Yes. Excellent.
So
Excellent.
we learned through AI how to take advantage, of matriculating all of this information that we're talking about today. And then, of course, there's the opportunity. I write articles. Over the years, I've written over 1,000 articles. I've given well over 1,000. I mean, it's probably up to 2,500 speeches that I've given. And so today, what I'll do is take out a past speech and review that with AI and ask AI, what other ideas would you like to share? And I would explain the audience, who I was going to address, how long the address would be, and what other comments does AI think are relevant for today's buyers and tenants, as an example. So those are 3 quick responses. And I shared with you earlier on, I've written courses with AI. And initially, I found that in both courses, I needed to revise the work by 25 to 30%, which is fine because the amount of time that it would have taken me to prepare the material, which was a couple hundred pages, and then I edited it down to approximately 130 pages for each course as time went by. By doing that, the courses are very, very pointed. One of them is about selling strategies, techniques, and tips. And another one, which everybody needs, is generating qualified leads and referrals.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. That's where do you sell this material, your books, or strictly for your company?
Yeah, I prepared the materials, the 2 courses for the National Association of Home Builders.
Oh, okay.
They have a huge educational department, and I received some monetary recompense, but it's not a lot. And I do a lot of public speaking and share a lot of the material, of course, that I've learned over the years. And the articles that I've written, I've contributed to trade associations throughout the years, be it economic development councils, chambers of commerce, boards of realtors, and home builder associations. For example, there are right now 700 local home builder associations that are affiliated with the National Association of Home Builders nationwide. And so they all need education. And as a direct result, I'll contribute articles to them. I'm a featured writer for various publications over the years and just contribute articles as a way of giving back to the universe.
That is incredible. And that's a wealth of knowledge. And how long did it take? Can I ask you, how long did it take before you felt you were pretty darn good at sales and reading people and for your business?
It's a very, very good question. And again, most people don't grow up in a family business. Most people don't get exposed to predecessors, their parents, their grandparents, great-grandparents. I did. And I didn't know at the time, of course, how special these people were.
Yeah.
And our business, frankly, was coast to coast and border to border in many instances. And, I took everything for granted. When I went to undergraduate school and came back, I knew that I had a job. And, but what was really interesting, when I came back to work with my father, he came over from the plant the first day, and I had met him at the retail store, and he walked over to the front door and, he first took me to the back. We had a huge warehouse that was part of the retail store. He gave me a list and he wanted me to reorganize the inventory. And I said, well, why are you doing this? He said, because all the jobs are full, that we have a job here that you can move the inventory around. And once you know exactly where the inventory is, you can go out and sell it. It took me a couple of weeks to move the inventory around, Ed, and it was approximately 50,000 cases. So I didn't have help. He just let me do it myself. And first day that I came, I had a blue blazer, white Oxford shirt, regiment tie, gray flannel slacks, black polished shoes, and I was wearing socks. And there I was, and I rolled up my slacks, I rolled up my shirt, and I began working. And the next couple of weeks, I learned the inventory very, very well. There were, at that time, 125 different products that I had to learn. And then afterwards, my father met me at the front door of the retail store when I had finished all of that. And he said, we still don't have a position for you in the factory. And what I'd like you to do, if you're interested, is go sell. Or you can stay here and work retail, and we'll give you $50 a week, take care of all your health insurance, get you a new car every 3 years. Oh, your brother doesn't want our home. You can have it when we no longer need it. Or you can go out and sell throughout I'm going to give you a territory of the state of Pennsylvania. And of course, I went out and I started selling the next day and never stopped. And in 2 years, I increased the sales in Pennsylvania by 62%.
Wow.
There was a vote amongst the family members, and I lost the vote to succeed my dad. And at the time, I was getting ready to marry my best friend, and her family business, they had 16 fabrication glass plants throughout the country. And my father-in-law, like my father, was chairman of the board and president of the company. And both of these gentlemen had been graduated from the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania. And they were my mentors. And my father-in-law introduced me to an industrial psychologist, and I was tested, and he had another company that he thought would be a good company with my background to go work in, called Ridge Home. And that was my formal entry into the construction industry in 1972.
Okay.
I was in the customer service department, and I learned all the mistakes that we had. Through the time that I was there, we had a gross of 214 builders, and I learned about all the mistakes, the shortages, the damages, and I was the little guy in customer service that had to handle a lot of questions. We had a large department, and before leaving to go back to graduate school, I had worked with well over 10,000 homes, and we had 214 builders, and those 10,000 homes were individual consumer purchases. Nobody ever called to say thank you. They all called, had complaints. Oh, there was one lady in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and I'll never forget Mrs. George. She was the nicest person, never complained, and she sent us brownies for helping her obtain the materials in lieu of the shortage.
Here, you're good.
But the real key is that while I spent those 2 years there, I learned how to overcome negativity. I learned how to spin any negative situation into a positive, with a positive resolution. And I think as you reflect on so many different points in your career, that was a tremendous learning experience. And although I didn't actually build homes, I built them on paper. And I learned the parts that were necessary in building homes and building smaller commercial buildings. And as a direct result, as I went back to graduate school, came out of graduate school, I went to work for a builder developer in Philadelphia that was building what you and I would call projects. And my first one was 256 homes, and we were building that in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And I was responsible for all the marketing and sales. And I learned from parlaying everything that I had done. It was fascinating. And I worked for excellent business professionals who were drivers to the nth degree. And they taught me the pragmatic side of a building company, and we beat the pro forma. And then I was recruited. And by the way, the day we almost opened our models, relatively the day after, Bethlehem Steel declared bankruptcy, and Allentown, Bethlehem, and Easton are next to one another. And they laid off 25,000 people, and a lot of the surrounding businesses that supported Bethlehem Steel went out of business too. And within a year, I had our company as the number one builder in the Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton trading area in Lehigh County. And I can tell you how I did it, and maybe that's for another section or session.
Yeah.
But I would share with you, I was taught always be innovative, be creative, never stop selling, never stop marketing, learn from your buyers. And your buyers, after trying products, it's one thing to come in and try a product, and then it's another thing to actually acquire it. So typically, I learned from our buyers, and I learned from my father over and over, we're only as good as the last sale we made.
Yes.
So, we've been in business since 1891. In fact, my great-grandfather could never beat his biggest competitor. And he finally bought them 20 years later, and they were established in 1823. And you learn about what makes corporations tick, what makes people great leaders, what helps them to motivate and inspire their employees to greater heights. And I've had two great mentors in both my father and father-in-law. And so fortunately, in raising my children, they don't make the mistakes that I made. And I learned from the mistakes that my forefathers had made, and it's really made a difference. Both of my children have international companies today.
Well, they learn from the best. That's you probably saved, going back to the story you were just telling, you probably saved thousands of jobs by making your company the number one construction company in the area.
Yeah. Well, what's really interesting too, moving on to Colorado, I found out 6 months after I was hired why I got the job. Why I really got the job. The community that I went to Colorado to work on had 414 acres. What was so fascinating, it was in a blue-collar market. And Ed, I figured out with interest rates rising to 16% for mortgages and 21% for construction loans, we became the number one semi-custom and custom community in the entire metro area in a blue-collar market.
Wow.
And people couldn't figure out how I did it. And I'll share with you. I got involved when I came there with the economic development councils in the trading area and the local jurisdictions. I got involved with the chambers of commerce. I got involved with the boards of realtors. I got involved there was just one home builders association. And I parlayed my knowledge of marketing and sales and helped them all grow. And what happened was I was getting more leads from the various chambers of commerce for people who were inquiring to move to Colorado. And I was getting the same thing. I was on the executive board of we refounded the Adams County Economic Development Council, which was big county, blue collar to the nth degree. And what I learned was the art of OPM, using other people's money.
Yeah.
And I provided all the marketing skills and the sales skills to these organizations. And as a direct result, helped them increase their membership, helped them increase their non-dues revenue, helped them retain their membership. And we also provided all the photography and the creative marketing and sales direction and increased their memberships, as I said, and increased their non-dues revenue. And as a result, we were the go-to folks, and I didn't buy the business. I just joined these organizations, but I had our staff and myself put the time and energy into helping them grow.
So you made yourself invaluable.
Today, we're still applying so many of the same Yes. Well, just not myself, our teams. And I instilled in our team the importance of getting involved in the community and participating, finding something that they liked. And I didn't care what it was. We had one salesperson I'll never forget. We had a shelter for dogs and cats, and she loved animals, and she wanted to help this particular shelter. We supported her, with contributions and memberships and crazy as it sounds, you start meeting people and they want to lease or buy what you're selling because they realize that you're giving back to the community. You're trusted, respected, you developed a rapport, and you sell and close.
Wow, thank you so much. I mean, this has been a wealth of information. Robert, this was a masterclass in real world sales and marketing strategy. Thank you for sharing your perspective and your playbook. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this episode with anyone passionate about innovation, leadership, and the future of intelligent automation. I'm Ed Moran, and as always, stay visionary.